Greetings, my name's Blaze and welcome to my channel. If you've not been here before, I talk about thought, theory, and my interpretation when it comes to things I'm interested in. Today's topic's going to be BS in the pagan community. Oh, this is going to be a fun one. There's many things I can talk about as far as BS in the pagan community, but I specifically want to focus in on folks that argue over things of what's right and what's wrong, and they share and spread false information. So one of the things that I've tried to do in my more recent videos is I started to add to the description below links and references. My personal thought and theory when it comes to the whole pagan, heathen, polytheistic revival movements, because let's face it, that's what they are. These are revival movements because they're being recreated off of remnants of the past. Are there actual old paths that have been around for ages and continue on? Sure, but I don't think most of the modern neo-pagan or neo-heathen movements are. And that's one of the things that I'm discovering through my study and research and getting reconfirmation from multiple authors, YouTubers, blogs, and forums, is that it's all revival movements. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with reviving stuff based upon old cultures and traditions that you find an interest in. What I don't think is appropriate or right is when people argue and fight over it. So I'm noticing that folks will be book taught, right? They'll read a whole bunch of books, and all of a sudden they're an expert on a particular matter and subject, and they will attack others that they speak with, either online or in person, because they're not saying the same things that they read about. They try to treat this as like fact and evidence of, this is exactly what they used to do and how they used to practice. A lot of folks also have this impression, well, this has been practiced since the dawn of time or since the beginning of man or since tribal days, and it's an unbroken line, and that's just not the case. So let me first point out there's nothing wrong with being book taught. That's how I started. I started out as being book taught. I was self-taught, did research on my own, and I looked for anything I could find. I looked for books, I talked to other people, and I still do that today. I still read a lot of books, and I still talk to a lot of people online, or I watch YouTube videos, or I watch other bloggers, or I read articles. And I get into it and I do some research. So what I want to encourage you to do, if you're interested in polytheism, or even if you're practicing polytheism, so we're talking about multiple gods and goddesses, typically a lot of people use the term paganism. Pagan, of course, coming from the Latin word, I believe it's paganus or paganus. It basically means country dweller or country folk. And it had to do with people, when they started introducing Christianity into the cities, the people out in the country kind of still followed their earth-based centered faiths and spiritualities that had to do with their deities and the divine that's in nature itself. That's why a lot of folks still use that term today. And then, of course, you have heathen, a lot of the Nordic, Scandinavian, Germanic type of movements, even though some people call it Nordic paganism or Germanic paganism. Others like to use the term heathen just because it usually refers to that general area. And there are some writings, especially in the old sagas and some of the Eddas, that you'll hear references like heathen, which again translates into heathen. But if you're interested in practicing these, I highly encourage you to start asking questions. When I share and bring up stuff, it's to inspire you to research and study more. I am not an expert. I've never claimed to be. I'm sharing my own personal experience. I'm 40 years old right now when I'm making this video. I was born in 81, and I've been researching this stuff, like I said, since the late 90s. So I have some information and some exposure, but it's very limited. Like I said, we're talking book taught, speaking with others. Now, more recently, I joined OBOD, Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. I joined them maybe about 10 years ago or 12 years ago. So I've been researching some of their material. I like a lot of it. So that's a little bit more formal training than I typically had before. I also attended Four Winds Trade Academy for some spiritual practices, such as like etheric touch type of Reiki, spiritual healing, things like that I was very interested in doing. So there is a little bit of formal training, but aside from that, and of course some martial arts training with some of like the Tai Chi Chuan, Ten Shen Qi breathing, different type of meditation techniques, and working with the internal alchemies when it comes to like Chinese type of stuff, the Western version of some of the Chinese practices. So aside from that type of formal training, a lot of my stuff, like I said, is just research and personal practice. But I want to share it because I'm interested in learning as much as many of you are. And I feel as a community, we can share with each other and learn from each other. However, I don't think we should use this information to argue and fight with each other, which is what a lot of us are doing. I encourage you to ask why is what you're stating or what practice you're doing Why is that an actual practice associated with this path? Where did you learn it from? Do you have references? And if you do have references, can you share them? And I think you should absolutely share your references. If you learned it out of a book, or if you learned it from a YouTuber or a forum or an online group, or if it's just a saying that you had heard regularly and don't have evidence for, state that straight up outright, because I think it's going to help us grow as individuals. There is so much BS and stuff that's floating around that people steal stuff from other paths and they claim it as their own path, and it's frustrating. And I really think we need to stop doing that on a whole as a community. There's a lot of these different types of things, but people claim it as their own. And I think we need to move away from that. It's fine to adapt and pull things into your own practice. I'm not saying to stop doing that, but let's try to at least acknowledge where things come from. A lot of revival movements do it. A lot of people do it in general. We learn from each other, and that's fine. Anyway, that's my 2 cents when it comes to the BS in the pagan community, what I personally advise doing about it, and what I'm going to be doing about it. So if this interests you at all, consider liking, thumb upping, subscribing, and putting your comments below. So catch you next time.